it can be shocking at how easily a narcissistic family member, or just a narcissist in general, can manipulate people to have them become enablers. It's shocking, especially when you see the truth, and when the truth is so obvious, and also when you have been a target of that person and have seen their shape-shifting abilities. There are so many ways in which they will use enablers and people around them, people that you care about, people that you love, to manipulate you and to continue being able to use you as their personal relief system, as their emotional trash can, as their scapegoat. And today I want to talk about, I wanted to examine with you guys a little bit how they pull this off. And so the first thing I want to tell you is, the pain of watching people that you love, of having people that you love in your family or among your friendships actually disbelieve you and fall for the manipulation tactics of your narcissistic abuser, of the person who has been abusing you horrendously, emotionally, physically, sexually, psychologically, since you were young. And to watch those people, to experience people that you were raised with actually gang up on you and side with your abuser. I don't think that there's anything more painful to me. That part was more painful in itself than the abuse itself. Is to have my father turn on me, my brother turn on me, And one of the reasons why this happens is because a narcissistic individual is an excellent shapeshifter. They are masters. They are master shapeshifters, and this can be so hard to believe when you haven't experienced this kind of evil firsthand, because they can be so charming, and they can be so generous and so humble, and they can appear to be so concerned and worried and anxious about you or about the person that they're abusing, I'll tell you, my mother, if you were ever to meet her, if you would have met her, especially during the time when I was in contact with her and when I was young, I wonder how many of you would have fallen for it. And I don't mean that in any sort of disrespect. It's because she really made herself out, my mother, the person who abused me my entire life. She portrayed herself as so fragile and so empathetic and so generous, and really people would she'd be on the phone with her friends and she'd be so attentive to what they had to say, and she really portrayed herself as this frail, kind, humble little lady, and yet meanwhile, as soon as there was no one around, she would get physically violent with me. She would seek me out. She would antagonize me just to get my reaction. And when I got my reaction, she would get that high that she needed, And this sort of stuff that happens because the way that they behave, enablers will not always see the cruelty, but even if they do see the cruelty, they already have this narrative in their mind of what this person is presenting themselves at. So cognitive dissonance plays a big role in this because, my father, even when he witnessed my mother hit me in the face when I was holding my newborn child, okay? My child, I think he was 3 weeks old or something like that. And she hit me in the face that day because of an invention in her mind that I wasn't like smiling enough. You know, even though like it's ridiculous. Like you know, okay, I'll tell you, I wasn't smiling enough, and I wasn't smiling on purpose to be rude to her. It had nothing to do with the fact that I was like on 3 hours of sleep because I had a newborn that was taken care of, you know. And she hit me in the face in front of my dad, and despite my dad witnessing this, you know, that narrative that she had set since I was small, like for my entire life that I've known her, that she was this soft and soft-spoken and feeble and empathetic and kind little lady, you know, that narrative, there was nothing that could be done, even when they witnessed abuse, to change how they viewed her, you know. And she would spend years cultivating this benevolent persona. And so, of course, you know, when people weren't looking, and when she would do those things to me, that benevolent persona always weighed down like a burden on me. And when you're a survivor of this type of covert, manipulative abuse, not only the enablers are convinced that this is a good person and that they couldn't have meant it, they didn't mean it, right? They didn't mean to hurt you. It must have been your character. You must have done something to deserve it, you know? But it's also you yourself. You question yourself thinking, my goodness, you know, is something wrong with me? Because you're raised in an environment where everybody supports this person and where their behavior is normalized and where you're demonizing, the demonizing of you is normalized. And so you grew up feeling that, you know, feeling that maybe you are the devil, maybe there is something wrong with you. And so there's also that question, you can also question yourself, and you question whether the abuse is real and whether maybe what you did, maybe you did do something wrong to deserve it, you know? This is evil at its finest, because relationships are stable. Healthy relationships are stable. There is no extremes like this. It's not that love is given and withheld and you're punished for setting a boundary, or for your individuality, or just for existing, really, you know, because essentially when they punish you, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with how they feel inside and their need to release that anger and that pain, or that sickness that they feel within. They have to release that onto someone. They have to project that onto someone, and you know, you're the target. It has nothing to do with you, you know. But we question ourselves because they are so good at shape-shifting. And this leads me to my second point, which is how they control the narrative. They are so good at preemptive storytelling. They know what they're doing. They will tell stories about you way before you even have time to reach out to someone, to ask for help. You know, to ask for help, to have your story be heard, for you to be validated by someone. They will tell stories way before you realize what's going on about you. And what they do is that they will constantly cast themselves as the victim, and they will use emotional language such as, like, I don't know what I did wrong, all I do is suffer, I only try to love my child. They will use this emotional language to trigger people's emotional responses. And they will paint themselves as long-suffering victims. I tried everything in my power. I've done everything that I could, and yet, You know, I remember that this started when I was so young. I was 7, 8, 9 years old. I remember my mom being on the phone with family members from Poland, so abroad, right? So I wasn't in contact with my family. I was quite isolated from ever having a relationship with my family. And she would be on the phone and she would be talking so horribly about me. And I was just a child, about my character, about how evil I am. And she would go on, and I would be in my room, and I would try and cover my ears, and I would rock back and forth, and I would put some music on, I put headphones on, I would do whatever I could to block it out. But I still knew this was going on. She would talk so horribly about me. My character, I'm the devil, and she's so loving, and I'm so evil. And still, I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I didn't know what I was doing wrong, other than, like, I don't want to wear a dress. I want to wear pants. I don't want to have blonde hair. I like to do sports. I don't want to do ballet. Like, I don't know, it was stupid things, like things that she would try and impose on me because she wanted me to be a certain way. She wanted me to present myself exactly as her extension, right? I couldn't be myself. So her reasons for demonizing me and for abusing me were simply because I wasn't what she wanted me to be, what she envisioned me to be. And as a mother myself now, I have kids, and I can't imagine, I raise my kids, and I can't imagine the evil that someone would actually do this to their own child, because children absorb so easily everything. If there's an issue, if there's something, they will so easily absorb everything, and they will feel, it's just so easy for them to feel guilty and for them to carry burdens if you're not careful as a parent, because they absorb everything, So doing that as a parent to a child, and you're grown up, you're a grown adult, instead of investigating, yourself, first of all, asking yourself why the hell you feel like this all the time, seeking out therapy, maybe looking into, if the child has behavioral problems, investigating where it comes from. No, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be straight up demonizing and punishment and control and shaming, and whether the child did something wrong or not, because it has nothing to do with the child. It has everything to do with what's happening within a very sick parent. And I can't describe to you the pain of watching your own mother vilify you like this and create this narrative about you to anyone who would listen. And so, of course, when I hit teenagehood and young adulthood, and then I tried to reach out to my father, to my brother, even to some friends, the narrative has already been set, and I was branded as difficult and mentally unstable. It was me who was difficult, who was mentally unstable, because she has been working on that narrative for so long. And this leads to the point that they will exploit emotional weaknesses within people. Narcissists know their audience. They are extremely good at reading people. They are really, really good at understanding people's emotional vulnerabilities, because that's what they do. That's how they get their supply. Okay? They're very, very good at understanding emotional vulnerabilities. And so, let's say if your narcissistic parent is dealing with a people pleaser, Like maybe that would be your other parent, maybe it would be your sibling or something like that, or a family friend or whoever. If they're dealing with a people pleaser, you know, they will recruit them through guilt. They will say things like, you're the only one who can fix this. I have no one else to talk to. I have no one, you know, there's no one out there. You're the only one who can help me. They will use this kind of emotional language to recruit the people pleasers. And then somebody who's a people pleaser, well, they want to please. They want to get that validation externally. So, of course, it's very easy to suck them into that kind of narrative, especially when the narcissistic parent will use that kind of language to make them feel so needed, right? And if they're dealing with a family member who's like conflict avoidant, that would be my brother, in my case, okay? You can't, conflict is like the plague. It was like the plague for him, due to trauma, of course, but he doesn't know this. He never looked into any of this, so it was always about denial with him. And they will use fear that a conflict is going to start, you know, to, they will basically, the conflict avoidant will do everything not to stir trouble again. And so by ignoring what's going on, they are enabling the abuse because they're closing their eyes, closing their ears, and pretending that nothing is happening. So that's another case. And then, of course, you have your empaths, right? And they will hook the empaths through pity. You know, when they will say things like, I miss my child so much. I don't know why they hate me so much. Boo-hoo-hoo, you know? I don't know why this is happening. And of course, anybody who feels empathy will have their heart broken when they listen to a person talk like this, you know? And these tactics are not like logical. It's straight up emotional manipulation. Because if you look at the logic, and if you really look at the logic, I mean, do you know, like anybody who's experienced this, how much it takes to actually go no contact with a parent? As their children, we are hardwired. You know, we are hardwired to be attached to them, right? We have a powerful attachment to a parent. When we're small, we know that we can't survive without our parents. You know, so we do everything, and that's why we feel guilty. That's why children internalize everything. Because if they don't have that parent, then they can't survive in the wild, right? So we're hardwired to have this powerful attachment with our parents. And even those of us who go no contact, the grief that we have to go through and having to like ignore that pullback to keep going back to them over and over and over again in the hopes that things will someday change. And that destruction that this pull will cause to our mental health, to our physical health, because things don't generally change with these types of systems. It's very hard to change a system, you know. The system is set in place, and when you're the target of that system, when you're the scapegoat, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think it's even possible to change the system, you know. The only thing that really changes, that can change something, is when the scapegoat leaves, because then they lose their source of supply, and then everything sort of gets destabilized, and they have to find a new scapegoat, right? So in my personal opinion, really, if anything, if there are any changes that will happen to that system, it's really when the scapegoat leaves. But the scapegoat has to leave for good, and really leave in the way that narcissistic parent will never have access to their original emotional relief system ever again. As long as you stick around, as long as they have a scapegoat, I mean, it's very easy for the entire system to continue blaming the scapegoat for the family problems. And another reason why they do this is because their loyalty is rewarded. Okay? So once the narcissistic parent has them convinced of their narrative, you know, when, first of all, siding with the narcissist, you have this illusion that you're going to stay safe because you're not their target. So that conflict avoiding sibling, for example, they know what they're doing. They're keeping themselves safe. They're putting you in harm's way so that they can stay safe. You know, they know that if they side with them, they will be able to be spared the worst of their wrath and their rage and their tantrums and that kind of thing. When enablers stick around with those narcissists, you know, they may get status and they may get attention that they crave, affection they crave, safety, this false safety, and they will avoid becoming the target of the narcissist by constantly, you know, letting them control them, basically. And this is something that us scapegoats don't do. We don't do that very well, and that's why we become scapegoats, because we see the dysfunction and we call it out, and we refuse to play that game, and we refuse to become their extension. And even though it's so crazy and chaotic and we don't really know who we are, we know who we're not. And this is what causes the narcissist to lash out at us and to target us, because we are the ones who fight back. And of course, you know, this type of abuse, the narcissistic abuse, is very often done covertly. It's hidden, okay? It's not, a lot of times, it can, especially in front of the public, right? It's not going to be hitting and screaming and demeaning you necessarily in an open, obvious kind of way. It's going to be done through gaslighting, through passive-aggressive comments, through sabotage, you know? Like I've talked about this example before, but it's a really excellent example, you know? When I was young, I had a best friend in high school, and I really loved her very much, and we got into a fight, and the friendship dissolved. And I wasn't a very healthy friend towards her. You know, I was young, and I came from a dysfunctional home, so I had absorbed a lot of terrible behaviors with my friends, which I didn't know were bad behaviors. Anyways, so the friendship dissolved, and I was feeling incredibly guilty, and I was feeling really sad, and I really mourned that friendship. And when my mother found out that I had gotten into a fight with that girl, what she did from that point on, every single day, was throw jabs at me by using that friend's name. Like, for example, she would say, "Oh, how's your friend doing? Oh, I forgot, you guys got into a fight. Such a shame she got to know your true character," you know? And then the next day she'd be like, "Oh, look at this magazine, look at the haircut. That reminds me of your friend's haircut. Isn't she beautiful? Your friend was so beautiful. What a lovely girl." And this was while I was mourning, you know? And every single day she would do this. And then, of course, I would have a huge reaction. And then, you know, if there was people over, or my dad was there, and then she would just mention a tiny little bit, "Oh, didn't your friend used to like this meat to cook this way," or whatever, just anything. "Didn't your friend used to like this, you know?" And then I would go, "Stop talking about my friend," and I would have this huge reaction. And I would be like, you know, because we're talking about jabs that were going on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and me telling her that I really needed her to stop talking about her and let me mourn this and just respect, you know, and just stop it, you know, stop it, you know. And of course, all the enablers would see was my reaction, and it was so easy for her in that moment to turn around and go, "Look at her. I do all these things for her. See how ungrateful, you know, see how she talks to me. Do you guys see how she talks to me? All I did was ask her mention this small thing, and this is how she reacts," you know? It's, you know, it's absolute sabotage. You know, other ways that she would do it, you know? Like if I would invite in high school, let's say a different friend over, you know, and she would be nice to some of my friends to their face, and she would be mean to others. but she would talk behind all of their backs. I never had a friend that she accepted. And so it was sabotage. She consistently sabotaged my friendships, and she also consistently sabotaged, my talents. Every time I said that I wanted to, if I said, okay, I want to become this when I grow up or that, and she'd be like, oh no, you're not smart enough to do that. That's not something that you could do. You're not the smart one. Like, she would literally basically say things like that to me. And if a friend would come over, she would be so nice to some of them, so nice. And oh, would you like a tea? Would you like a cookie? And oh, so nice. And then as soon as that friend left, she'd be like, oh, you can't be friends with her. She's, have you seen what she does for a living? That's beneath us, and like whatever. And if I would tell those same friends what she was saying about them or what was going on at home, they wouldn't believe me. They wouldn't believe me. It was so easy. It was so easy for her to manipulate the entire world around me all the time. They will so easily deny everything or reframe the narratives to make you look crazy. And when you try to explain to someone what's going on, when that person hasn't experienced the abuse directly, when that person hasn't experienced the true face of the narcissist, it's like you're completely alone in the world. You're completely alone in the world. And the final thing that they do, I think, is that they will exploit your family's need to be together and to have harmony and peace. Most people in a family want peace. They want harmony. They want good relationships with their family members, And what happens is that the narcissistic parent, what they will do is that they will frame your boundaries or your individuality as the reason why they're always upset, as the reason why there's division in the family. They will paint the entire story around you as them trying to rescue you from yourself. As them trying to restore harmony in the house. And that's why they do what they do with you. And that's how abuse becomes normalized. That's how name calling becomes normalized. Silent treatments become normalized. Hitting becomes normalized. All they're trying to do is have harmony in the house, and they don't understand why it's not happening. And they do this by weaponizing the enabler's need to have a family, to have no conflict, to have a peaceful environment. And so every time that they come home and they see the narcissist upset, or the narcissist will come to them and cry about how they're upset, and they will use that emotional language to do it, then they will turn to you and they will say, you're upsetting the family. You're upsetting the peace. You're upsetting everything. And what I find so insane in this whole thing, in my story, in my family, every once in a while my mother would go to Poland to visit her sister. And while she was gone, the house was so peaceful. The house was so peaceful. I never had any trouble with my dad. I never had any trouble with my brother. Everything was cool. I was able to study peacefully at home. I was able to see my friends. I was able to just be myself. And there was no fights. There was no fights. And as soon as she came home, the tension in the house would explode. Everybody would sort of, like soldiers, right? Stand up straight and pay attention to what this narcissistic person wants or does, As soon as she would come home. And then you have all this talk about harmony and peace. Do you guys not see what's going on here? But they don't, because the narrative has already been painted, because they use emotional language and they're really, 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 really good at it. A narcissist understands people's emotional weak spots, and they will exploit them. They will use them to their advantage. okay? They will create narratives about you or about whatever it is that they want to control, before the truth can speak for itself. They will have already laid out a whole narrative before you even know what's going on, which is why it's so hard for you to defend yourself, which is why it's so hard for the truth to prevail. They will offer rewards to those who stay loyal. They will offer fake safety. They will offer affection to those who stay loyal. And they know exactly how to smear their scapegoat without getting caught. So a narcissistic family system is a system designed to protect the abuser and isolate the scapegoat, the truth teller, okay? And so having said all that, you're not crazy. And it's so easily for us to doubt ourselves, to trust ourselves. It's so easy for us to trust ourselves. It's so easy for us not to trust ourselves and to doubt ourselves, because we're surrounded by an environment where everything around us, ever since we were small, is telling us to shut up and that we're wrong and there's something wrong with us and that dysfunction is normal. So of course, self-doubt is such a huge thing, and many of us will often ask ourselves, was I really abused? Was I really abused? Did this really happen to me, or maybe it's me? These kinds of we will question ourselves, and we do this because we have been raised in an environment where everybody is completely brainwashed, and everybody is trying to brainwash us too. They don't want us to tell the truth. They don't want us to be healthy. They don't want us to make healthy decisions for ourselves. Because if we do that, the narcissistic parent will lose their source of supply. They will lose their relief system, their emotional trash can. So they will do everything in their power to prevent that from happening. So the most important thing that you can do right now is be aware of this and trust your gut, trust yourself. Trust yourself. Trust your feelings. Are you hurt? Did you get hurt? Are you able to be yourself? Are you able to thrive? Are you thriving? You know what I mean? Is this good for you? You ask yourself, is this good for me? And if the answer is yes, you're hurt. And no, this is not good for you. And yes, you're hurting. You're traumatized. You're getting sick from the trauma. You're in pain. You're grieving. You have been abused. You have been through a lot, and you have to prioritize yourself and heal. You have to take care of yourself, because they won't. And they have trained you to believe that self-care makes you evil. They have trained you to believe that setting a boundary for yourself, saying no, is you abandoning the family, is you hurting people. So learning to set boundaries after this can be absolutely terrifying. Terrifying. It can make you physically ill to set a boundary, okay? When the abuse has been so bad for your entire life. That's how I experienced it. Saying no to someone, even if it's something stupid, like I'm tired, I'm not going out tonight, it made me physically ill in the beginning when I was relearning to respect myself. This stuff takes time, a lot of time to undo, but it begins with you acknowledging how you feel, acknowledging yourself despite all the voices around you, and realizing that even though there's this whole group telling you that you're wrong and you're crazy, actually the problem is not you. The scapegoats carry dysfunction. They are the target of dysfunction. They are the carriers. They are the ones who are sacrificed on behalf of the rest of the family or the group, in order for there to be fake peace and for everybody to be able to continue living in denial. So when the scapegoat leaves, of course, that creates quite a bit of chaos, because the usual target and the usual, excuse is no longer there. So what are they gonna do now? You deserve peace, and you deserve to be loved. You deserve to love yourself. And so I encourage you very strongly to start listening to your heart and to do what you gotta do to bring yourself to a safe space. I love myself, I trust myself, and I see you soon.